to NEK-TV Rocks. My guests today are
Suzi Dix.
Rose Bathalon.
and you're here as part of a support group for families of those living with dementia. Is that correct?
Actually, caregivers.
You tell me what it is.
Caregivers is the term
Care-
that we use because sometimes it can be a good friend, it could be a grandchild, daughter, son. Oftentimes now we're seeing it's either husband or wife.
Yeah.
And again, some people are coming in just to get a little information and share it with the rest of the family members. But
Sure.
here in Newport, we call this the caregivers support group.
And they don't necessarily need to be living with them either. We've had nieces and niece taking care of our aunt and uncle, coming to get resources and support, so.
And again, there's no obligation because sometimes people come for getting the information they need and we may not see them again, or sometimes they can return a year later. No
Right.
obligation. It's a place where people can go to realize they're not alone.
That's really important.
Yeah, I think
How
so.
long has the group been running?
Well, it's funny because Rose and I keep questioning it, and I finally dug through my files last night and found that our first meeting was September of 2014.
Wow.
Yeah.
But we had gone through personal journeys ourselves caring for our parent.
Yeah.
And I was living here, working here in town, but also my mom was in New York. So I was called the long-distance caregiver. So every few weeks I would go back home, spend a few days, relieve the caregivers. And there wasn't a support group or a place I could go other than occasionally in New York. And then we had the opportunity to be trained for a support group, and that's when I met Rose.
Yep, I had moved back to Vermont from Massachusetts, and I had my own support group at an adult day program that I was working at in Massachusetts, and so working with the Massachusetts chapter, Alzheimer's Association chapter. So when I came to Vermont, I said I would like to help the Vermont chapter, and contacted them, and they said, wow, we got somebody that wants a co-facilitator up in the NEK
it's
area
ideal.
where you live. I says, okay, and so we met and got our training together, and been doing this since 2014.
It's a very good balance too. Which,
Yeah.
And I think it's helpful to have someone work. Oftentimes support groups will be a single facilitator. Co-facilitating has been ideal for us. I mean, occasionally you may have a conflict and you may
Absolutely.
not, but it's rare. But I think
where
her-
she can't show up or I can't,
Yeah,
which is very
exactly.
rare.
Yeah.
But you know, her personality is just wonderful speaking with people. I might be more of an organizer sometimes for getting the word out, or
Tech person,
Yeah.
organizer, which I'm not at all.
What a great balance.
It is. We do balance.
but
each
I
other
think
well.
the fact that we've both experienced the journey
Right.
has made it a little bit more natural for us to allow people to speak and express their concerns, their worries, their fears, their emotions. But it is important that people reach out when they're in this
Right.
position.
Where are the meetings in Newport?
Well, we've been lucky to have them in the Goodrich Library right here on Main Street in the second floor.
Isn't that a great facility?
The
Yeah.
Vermont room is got
Yeah.
overstuffed wing chairs. It makes
Yeah.
it very
You
comfortable.
can't get out of.
Yeah, exactly. But they have this round section of the room where everyone can come
Yeah.
together, and it just makes it very, very comfortable and convenient. And also with the handicapped access, the parking in the
Right.
back, the elevator in the side of the building, because some people are either aged or they may have some disabilities, so that makes it
How
easier.
often are they?
Once a month.
Once a month, yeah.
It's always the fourth Tuesday of the month.
Yeah.
We used to have them in the evening, and
It's
then
evolved over the,
It's
it evolved
pandemic.
because of the pandemic. We actually started in the hospital, and
Yeah,
they had a
the
nice
waiting
waiting
room.
room on the second floor. And then,
Right.
of course, we know what happened with COVID, that got closed.
so we went Zooming,
Yeah.
and that actually brought people from all over the state,
Yeah.
which was ideal because there weren't
Right.
a virtual support group as many. I think there was maybe one or two, and we kept it consistent. But we did find a mix of people from southern Vermont over by Burlington that had a chance to at least express, because being a caregiver is so isolating to begin with. Then not to mention pandemic, the fear of infection, still trying to schedule doctor's appointments,
Right.
all the things. So We did flip to Zoom for, I think, almost a year.
And then we switched our time because of
Yeah.
location, because we used to be from 6:30 to 8,
Mhm.
and then we did the Zoom.
The library can't really do that.
No.
Exactly,
So
so
we
we're,
worked within their window.
yeah, so we're
Yeah.
3:30 to 5, the fourth Tuesday of the month. Not the last, because there's some months that have
Right.
5, that can be
Get
confusing.
And we
confusing.
know that
Yeah,
routine.
yeah, so the fourth
Yes.
Tuesday of the
Yeah.
month.
Yeah.
And so it's working out good with the
Yeah,
time.
the
You know,
time
there's
seems
never
to be
any
good.
perfect time
No,
for
of course
everybody.
not.
Yeah.
And,
So somebody who's interested can just show up.
Absolutely.
mhm.
I do use Front Porch for getting the word out. We have it also posted on the Alzheimer's website.
That's actually how I found you and why you're here.
Okay.
Oh, really?
And then the
Really?
Chronicle posts us in their Kingdom calendar.
Yes.
And then I just do a reminder to all the email addresses that have accumulated over the years, just to let people know. And I would say in the past year or so, we've tried to also bring in people that represent organizations or can explain programs and federal programs specifically for funding. And that's been helpful.
I
Well,
bet.
especially if it comes up in the conversation between the
Right.
caregivers. Oh, well, we don't have the knowledge
Right.
ourselves, so let's
Right.
we got Lynn Limarge to come to
From the
speak
VNA.
about the difference between palliative care and hospice care. So she
Right.
came and
Mhm.
did a little
Help
15-minute
clarify it. Mhm.
segment on that.
Mhm.
Not to take over the time for the caregivers to speak, but
Mhm.
just to give them that little bit of knowledge that they could
Yeah,
use.
because it's really important. It's so hard to know where to even start.
Well, and we always tend to say the first call for anyone, if they really have questions, concerns, not sure which direction to go, is the Northeast Kingdom Council on Aging in St. Johnsbury. They're a wealth of information. They do have a number of people.
Mhm.
Karen DeRochier is the one that oversees the operation, but they understand these federal programs for funding so well.
It's
I
good
mean,
that somebody does, because I
Well,
don't think
this
the
is
feds
it.
do
I mean,
themselves.
exactly. I mean, the paperwork that's involved in the restrictions, but even
Yeah.
what's called choices for care,
Yeah.
an actual family member or friend who's caring for someone
Yeah.
could be paid. But you do have to go through the hoops and loops. It is
Yeah.
federal funding.
Yeah.
So,
One of the challenges for people here who would truly benefit and would love to go to a support group is finding help when they need somebody to be there in the house.
absolutely.
How do they do that? And then how do they physically get to the group? We have no public transportation.
Well, there is transportation that had been provided. We knew of someone that was out of town that was unable to drive, was caring for a partner. So again, Northeast Kingdom Council on Aging arranged X amount of trips of transportation to get that person here in Newport back home again. And it was a distance, like a good 45-minute drive one way. So those options are there, but again, they have to be arranged in
And
advance.
somebody could ask for that through you.
Oh, no, actually through Northeast Kingdom Council on Aging.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yes,
have
they
all
can
those-
do that.
Yeah.
Now, the question of who can sit with their loved one while they're
Right.
gone is a question that, again, sometimes it can be a friend, cleaning person. Not everyone's able to have hired help.
Right.
Professional agencies, they're expensive.
Exactly.
But it again is just reaching out. Sometimes it's even a daughter or a son that's willing to come and visit mom and dad for
At
a
that
week,
time.
and yes, coordinate it for that time frame. But it is having, probably the toughest thing is asking for help
Yes.
from a friend. Our neighbors aren't always the neighbors we once had because they've moved away. Our whole nucleus of our lifestyle, especially I think in the Northeast Kingdom, has changed over the years. You know, the
Right.
children have moved away for job opportunities. Neighbors aren't the neighbors you may have once had that always checked in on you. So it's the hardest thing to ask for help or reach out, but it's
Right.
important.
Well, and to accept help, because sometimes some people say, oh, anything we can do, you help, but it's like, it's too
I
overwhelming.
can
Where
do it myself.
Yeah, so
And
it's
There's a
like,
pride.
So
Yeah.
often the people who offer to help don't know what would be helpful. So they need some guidance. It would be
Exactly.
really helpful if you could sit with my mother for 2
Yes.
hours every
Exactly.
fourth Tuesday.
Yes.
Oh, I
Yes.
can do that, yeah.
So it's
Exactly.
for the caregiver to say that, you know, to
Yes.
come to the point
That's
where
it. And it is
it's okay
hard.
to say that. You
Yeah.
need to say that
Yeah, the
because
more
you,
specific you can
Right.
be,
yeah, yes,
the easier it is to
Right.
get help. And the
Yeah.
sort of vagueness of, well, maybe some shopping, maybe.
yeah,
That gets complicated.
yeah.
It
Yeah.
does, yeah.
But something nice and concrete,
Yeah.
like
I need this.
either I need a ride to, or, okay, that's easy.
Yeah,
And I think it's also just getting the more education to people, because there is a stigma. There's a fear factor. I saw it when I was caring for my mom.
Yeah.
You know, the friends in the social circle that they had got smaller. There was a fear. People
Yes.
were like, I don't know how to act. I don't know how to, you know,
fear
speak
of
or
the
visit,
disease.
or
yeah.
it could happen to me too.
Mm.
And that was one of the hard things I saw as I was caring for my mom. And I think it can happen with close friends too. They're like, I don't know what to say to him anymore.
Right.
I don't know what to do. You know, there are sometimes mobility or just general understanding of communications that becomes a challenge. So it is also, I can do it for myself, but yes, you need to ask for help. And once you open that door, I think people will be grateful to be part of the journey.
And that's, you know, the Alzheimer's Association has a lot of literature, which I brought some of it today, but some of it's, you know, behavior, activities, communication. So even if it's not the direct caregiver, but if it's a neighbor, you know,
Yeah.
just to educate yourself a little bit on the disease so you can feel more
Right.
comfortable in saying, I can go sit and,
Right.
you know, I can help you, you know, what can I do, you know?
Yeah, and although this is run technically through the Alzheimer's Association, it includes all forms of dementia. right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh,
Because dementia really is the overhead name
Exactly.
for the diseases themselves.
Yeah.
The memory loss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And Alzheimer's is one that is a specific
Yeah.
dementia.
And as you say, most of us have had some personal experience, and that's going to be the reality of probably everybody before
As we
before long,
age.
as we all live longer and age.
And
We're going to see it, if not in ourselves, in family members or friends.
right, friends.
Well, I just got a statistics here, is that we got 6 million folks living with Alzheimer's
Yeah.
just in America,
Yeah.
and 11 million non-paid professional caregivers for America, yeah, because
Exactly.
on our
So it's,
literature.
it's affecting so many
Yeah,
families.
cheery little statistics.
Yeah.
Yeah, only because, if I can put a plug, one of the fundraisers for the Alzheimer's Association, you've heard of the walks and stuff like that.
Yes.
But what they're doing right now is called the Longest Day fundraiser, and they're kind of concentrating on Hike for the End, and so this is one of the statistics that's written on it, and that we
This will
have,
be the month of June,
yeah,
the
for-
longest day.
yeah, for the month of June, and we
Hiking.
have,
Oh, that is the longest day,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
the
That's what
longest
they're
day.
playing off of, I think.
Yeah.
but, so we're concentrating on hiking the Long Trail, you know, and raising money for,
That's great.
yeah, so people can do this as a fundraiser instead of the walk, or there are 400 peaks in Vermont, or, so anyhow, my brother and I have committed to hiking 70 miles of the Long Trail, because my mom was diagnosed at 70, and and my brother turned 70 this year. So we said, we're gonna do from the
The
Stowe.
70.
Well, it might be a little bit more, from Stowe to the Canadian border, the last stretch of the Long Trail.
Nice.
So if people want to sponsor us, they can certainly, actually, if they're interested at all in going to find out about this hike, you can just go to alz.org/
Those can go up at the
Yeah,
end. It's
we'll
too,
put it up.
It's
Yeah.
hard to remember.
Yeah, the longest
Yeah.
day thing, kind of thing. So anyhow, that's something they can do. But,
That's really cool.
yeah.
Is there also going to be a regular Alzheimer's walk here this year?
You know, it's personally organized, so I have not heard. I know St. Jay was pretty active,
Huh.
They're
but
huge. They're
again,
one of the biggest WAPs in the
mhm.
state. They got in St.
Yeah,
Johnsbury,
yeah,
because
yeah.
I think they
Yeah.
get the academy's support behind that.
Exactly. But, you know, even now, they're working on having an advocate in Montpelier for the
Mhm.
government, because this is the next stage of additional funding, is to try and have a representative that will speak up for the disease and do their best to get the information out, which is going to get us to another
Do you mean
stage.
somebody who will be in the state building?
Exactly,
Mhm.
yes. And that will be
Yeah.
a spokesperson. So it will be an advocate. And that's new for the association, for the state of Vermont at least, so
Mm.
we hope.
And have they appointed that person yet?
Not yet. They're working on it, apparently. They've had
Uh-huh.
to select a few individuals, but it sounded fairly positive last month when we spoke with someone.
Great. It would be great if, A, they appoint somebody fairly soon,
Mhm.
and B, that person can be really visible, because it's not just about advocacy within the state building, because they get so much information thrown at them
Mhm.
that most of it just carries right on by them. But if they can engage the greater community, that's down
That's
a lot
gonna
of
get the
pressure.
information.
But people, all of us, we tend to give up if after we've pushed against something for a while that nothing gives. I have to just get on with life.
Well, it
But
seems as
that
if
sounds encouraging.
yes, and we have one individual in the Williston, Vermont office that is working very strongly. She is down at the Montpelier facility for each month. I think it's the first Thursday of every month, just getting people together to encourage the state of Vermont. This is a cause, and we need to give more funding. But again, for us, on our meetings, we're working with the individual, truly, and
Mhm.
just giving them the encouragement to speak up. Some people say, well, I'm going to come. I may not say a thing, but I'm just going to
Yeah,
sit
right.
there. And you find that, you know, you slowly peel away those
Yeah.
edges.
And they start to get comfortable with each
Mhm.
other too,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
trusting each other, and realizing they're not going to be judged on what they say in this group. They just,
No.
they just need to talk, and our meetings can really vary on what the conversation is going to be, depending on, we give everybody some
Yeah.
time to talk and what they come with on
Mhm.
that meeting, what they need to. They might have a certain thing they're stuck with.
Exactly.
What can I do? How
Right.
can I? And so they're very good in helping each other, and
All different
everybody's,
personalities.
yeah, people's stories are different, and who they're caring for, and what the dynamics of their family is.
Right.
You've
Mhm.
got so many differences, but they all have
Very
something
true.
in common, that they're caregivers.
They certainly do.
Yeah.
And it's all about loss. for the
Grieving.
Because you
caregivers.
are
So
losing.
much.
As,
Yes.
as they're with you,
Yeah,
day
just-
by day, there is a loss,
We
absolutely.
got anticipatory
Grief.
grieving. Grief, yeah,
Yeah.
we finally got
Yeah,
that
the
word out.
things you no longer can do
Yeah.
together, or the recall. Every day is different. There could be good days, and there
Mhm.
can be difficult days when you're caring
I mean,
for
all of
someone.
us sort of look forward to, quote, retirement, whatever that means to us, and the assumption that we will do things with whoever our partner is.
Exactly.
But that isn't always possible.
No, that time is not there
And
sometimes.
there's the disappointment around
Yes.
that, but then as the incremental deterioration.
Right, so you got the disappointment plus taking care of the person
Right.
going on at the
Yeah.
same time.
Yeah,
So it's hard.
and people divide up their household tasks the way they do, but suddenly that one person has all of the burden,
Mhm.
as well as the burden of caring for the person.
Yeah.
And with the best of intentions, it is a burden.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work.
You got the change of the roles, your
Yes.
role
Right.
change.
Right.
Yeah, whether you're a daughter now taking care of your parent, or you're the wife or the husband taking care of his
Right.
wife. Yeah,
Mhm.
Exactly.
so that's hard too.
And you do need to be aware that financial legalities are all needing to be put in the queue. You need to make sure power of attorney is taken care of,
Mhm.
how you're going to handle the banking
Mhm.
accounts. And it's ideal if you do have various members in your family that can step up and say, I'll take that
Right.
role. But if not, and I think sometimes women may have been accustomed to their partner
Right.
handling the finances. So it's like, oh my golly, where do I start?
Mhm.
But that's one of the first things
Right.
that we try and encourage, make sure that you do have representation and that your financials are in order.
And sometimes it's hard to say to a parent, okay, I really need to see what you're doing with your checkbook, or however you pay your bills, because it may not be making sense what's happening right now.
Very true. Sometimes we've heard stories of a daughter or a son just still trying to allow their parent to do
Yes.
what they've been doing until they find out later, oh my golly, there's mail that's been piled up and stashed into a dress.
And they're in
dresser
danger of
drawer.
losing their
Yeah.
home, but
Yeah.
nobody knew.
This is it. And
Exactly.
it's when do I start to really step in?
Yes.
And it's a gradual process. It's a trust.
Mhm.
And we have heard that from some of the caregivers just saying, I've tried, what are the other tricks I can do? And that's when people share and tell them, well, this is what I had to do, or this is
Right.
what worked for me.
And
but it
sometimes
is
you
fun.
have to get some outside resources, and giving up the car keys is a big one.
Yeah,
you
the
know.
decisions of going to the doctor
Yeah.
to either get a
Yes.
diagnosis and when is it time to stop driving. Those are really important, and yet they're emotional too,
They're
because
really challenging.
people
And
are
that-
proud.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's funny. Some have no problem. Oh, he had no
Yeah.
problem. He gave me the keys, and the other ones was like,
Right.
how can
Right.
we do this?
Where do I
you know?
hide the keys?
Yeah, yeah.
My mother had an Alzheimer's diagnosis, and at some point, clearly she had some incident with the car, but she still had enough going for her, and this was in another country, but she had enough going that she made the decision herself. She just got rid of her car.
Yes.
She
Good.
went out of the
Yeah.
house one day, took it to wherever
I
her
don't
local
need this
garage
anymore.
was, and
That's good.
and that was the first
Yeah.
any of us knew
Yeah.
about it.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah, well,
So-
a wise woman.
But
Yeah.
It's not always the
it's
case.
challenging. And
Yeah.
I've just watched the neighbor's daughter trying to extricate the car keys from her father.
Oh,
Not
A
a
little bit of a
peaceful process.
challenge.
No, no,
well,
that,
there are also other tools as well that I
Yeah.
think, fortunately, with cell phones, so many people are using them now. We have heard some partners make sure that they have an app on their phone so that they can be aware of where that individual is, because at times people are getting lost in their own car.
Right.
So I
However,
think,
we live in an area geographically
Good
that
point.
is, should we say, cell phone challenged.
yes,
Yeah.
there are pockets. You're absolutely right.
I live in Newport. I have no cell service in my house.
oh, wow.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it's not
not
as
as
easy as
applicable.
we think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I do think also there are concerns sometimes of wandering when we give a little bit of freedom to someone that we're caring for.
Right.
There are situations where people will just turn the knob and take a stroll. So keeping the police informed, I made sure there was a photograph of my mom with that local police, so that in the case that she looked confused and wasn't quite sure where she was, at least they knew her name and where to
Right.
bring her home. Because at times you'll say, oh no, that'll never happen to my loved one, but it did to my mom, and
That's right.
it, totally out of character. But I think making sure that you have some kind of tools out there. We even know of people using cameras in their home so that they can, if they're comfortable and it's at a stage that's still
Right.
safe, they can leave the house, they can run errands, maybe they can go for a quick game with friends, and yet they can still turn on their cell and just see how that person is. You
Right.
can speak
Right.
to them, so there are ways of being safe, how to purposely close doors that can't be on, the knobs can't work, gating
Or the
areas.
key code punch,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah,
and that's where a lot of education factor to taking care, being a caregiver
Yeah.
for someone with dementia. You
And
know.
I presume that your group spends a lot of time problem solving.
Yes.
emotions,
Yeah.
questions of, you know,
Yeah.
how should I have
And again,
handled
what
that?
might work for somebody else might not work
Yeah.
for the other one, but
That's
that's
right.
okay.
It's a
You kind
suggestion.
of brainstorm, and from what we
Mhm.
know and what others experience in their home, we
Mhm.
kind of, again, we have no magic button or this is, you're gonna make it all better, this is what you gotta do and it's gonna
Right,
work,
right.
but this is something.
And there's laughter in the
It
group
needs
as
to be
well. I mean, there
laughter.
are tears,
Humor's really
certainly.
important.
Oh, very.
But, you
very.
know, when people can laugh and realize, you
Yeah.
know, that felt good and
Yeah.
Mhm.
you know, this is not a total grieving process,
Right.
but also
Oh,
I
yeah.
think it just relieves their tension. We
Yeah.
try and make it just a comfortable zone. When they
Yeah.
come in, we greet them, we have literature there, familiar faces, but you see a camaraderie, and again, there's no obligation, but.
And again, it's, since we've been doing it,
Yeah.
you know, our group has evolved in size.
Oh, yeah.
And I think, basically, it's been more so, since the COVID that we've getting people to come. Again, is that getting the word out and then people
Yeah.
getting comfortable? And just recently, I want to put a plug in for the VNA for having a bereavement support group, because that was one of our issues. Once our caregiver lost their loved one, we
Yeah.
had no place
Yeah.
in
Where
the
can they
area
go?
where they can go. So we're
Right.
really happy that
Yeah.
they
It's
started
a
this in
transition.
January.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And
now
is
we
that a
can.
monthly meeting as
It
well?
is,
I
yeah.
think it's first Tuesday
Yeah,
during the day.
Yeah, I actually wrote
Um,
it down from 3 to 4:30 at the
Mhm.
VNA. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
First
called,
Tuesday.
first years first.
Yeah.
And it is true. Sometimes it'll take a few months before anyone is really wanting to reach out, or there's so many legalities that you have to handle at the time of
Right.
death anyway. But we found that 3 of our members had lost their loved ones in the first of the year.
Mhm.
So that was sudden for us, and knowing about the bereavement group,
Yeah.
we're grateful that they do have a place if they
Yeah.
wish.
Right.
So.
Mm.
Yeah, that was a need that clearly was not being met, and there must be so many others. And it's tempting to want your group to be all things to all people,
Mhm.
but you can't.
Mhm.
But
Exactly.
if other things can spring from that, that's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And well, they have memory cafes that are in Burlington, I think down in White River Junction, and
Uh-huh.
oftentimes people are going down to Hanover for
Sure.
medical checkups or follow-ups, and so these are available in various spots. White River Junction's becoming very, very active in
And are the memory
support
cafes for the person who has some form
Yes,
of dementia,
with their
or for the
partner.
families?
It actually is for caregivers with their loved one.
Right.
Okay.
And again, each one is rather unique, but again, socializing with the individual who's been diagnosed, or even if
Right.
they haven't been diagnosed. I mean,
I mean,
dementia's
What does
dementia.
diagnosis mean? Nothing.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly. So our area, again, could use other resources, but, right now, this is what we have to offer, and,
Right.
and we're committed to
It's a
it.
big deal.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
big deal. If you had a magic wand, what would be some of the other resources?
I think probably something socially for the caregiver and their loved one,
Mhm.
that has been diagnosed, so that these people can get out and interact with others.
Yeah.
Right.
And again, it's usually a once-a-month situation in a comfortable zone. It doesn't have to be at a cafe, but a place where
Yeah.
people can sit and break bread.
That
So
would be nice.
that would be probably the most
Especially
beneficial.
once caregivers, the person with the disease that has in the first stage, or where they
Yeah.
still, and again, you have the young onset.
Yeah, early onset,
Yeah, yeah.
which is completely different scenario
That's
affecting.
really hard.
It is, and that
Yeah.
tends to be
It's
a
younger.
more genetic strain, but
Yeah.
you are finding people in their 40s and 50s.
Yes. And there are some groups in Vermont, but
Yes.
not in our area, where
Right.
they have
Yep.
the couples come together.
Specific,
Sure.
yeah,
You know.
specific, yeah,
Yeah,
6-week
and,
programs.
Yeah, which is really good, and
Mhm.
a lot of them, as the disease progressed, they have built up such a good relationship with whoever was in their group to continue, and do
Yeah.
some things outside the group, which would be really nice. Yeah, they call it younger onset now, Alzheimer's, only because it got really confusing with early Alzheimer's.
Early
and
stage,
Early
yeah.
stage,
Mhm.
yeah, so they,
Mhm.
to just make it a little less confusing,
Mhm.
yeah. But,
But the labels don't really matter.
no,
No.
it's just-
No.
And they'll change again, they always do.
Yeah,
But the bottom line is that you have a support group, and it's a way for people to come together.
Right,
mhm.
and also to encourage them to take care of themselves, because
Oh,
who
that's
else is
huge.
going to do it? We have to eat right, we have to try and get sleep, which is a challenge right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
That's a really big
Because,
issue.
yes, some
Yes.
people just tend to be restless in the middle of the night. confused about the time, and the caregiver is not getting the quality sleep that they perhaps should be getting. But I think as we really have to focus back on ourselves, which is very hard to do, your day is just oftentimes just go, go, go.
When you're putting out constant fires,
Right.
That's it.
it's really hard to think,
it's-
I need some time out.
I
Yeah.
think that's one of our biggest messages.
Mhm.
You know, it's okay to take time for yourself. You don't need to feel guilty, and you need to take time for yourself.
But how do you do that when the
Yeah.
other person is always there?
Exactly.
And that's why
It is just trying to find a little bit of time for yourself.
Right.
There was a
Yeah.
program called Tools for Caregivers that was offered in years past. I had taken it here at the library, and I think it was at least 6 or 7 weeks, once a week. You were surrounded with others,
Yeah.
whether it had anything to do with the illness of dementia or cancer, what have you. We were caregivers. And it was driven home. You need to tell yourself one thing I'm going to do for myself this week. We know of someone who purposely takes nature walks. She needs it. And, you know, it's refreshing. Others, you know, they'll lean towards chatting with a friend.
Sure.
But it's easier said than done. But if you don't take care of yourself, you're going to be compromised caring for someone else. So
Right.
And it's
That's
getting,
important.
and letting go the guilt of, like, I'm gonna go out and do something fun, you know.
for me,
but
yeah.
For me,
Mhm.
versus, he always used to do it with me, you know, and now
Yeah,
it's
I
like,
know.
where
He
you-
can't go, I should suffer too. And
Right,
that's
yeah,
crazy.
so getting rid of, let go of that guilt, because you do
Right.
need to take care of yourself. And again, you're not gonna be any good if you become sick, as far as
That's
taking care of
exactly
your loved
right.
one.
And it must be really helpful to the group that both of you have been down this road.
Well, that was the initial purpose for
Yeah.
finding this
Right.
group, because not knowing where to go or express your feelings
Exactly.
is difficult. So
And I actually remember my dad, when he was taking care of my mom, he was on a phone support group, you know,
Yeah.
they called at a certain time, and he liked it. I'd be on the phone talking to him and say, oh, I'm gonna have my support group pretty soon, so he looked forward to that support
That's
group,
nice.
even on the phone, you
Yeah.
know, because you're talking to people all in the same boat, so,
yeah,
yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
But we try and just listen during the group. We're not really there to advise them. If they have questions of where to go or what to do, we can help at that. But
The
I think
resources.
listening to them and letting them share with each other is
Sure.
probably the most important thing in why we do this.
Mhm.
We are out of time.
Oh.
I know, it's so fast.
Oh,
We just
Thank
got
you.
started. But thank you for coming in. It's such a big need here. And it's so nice to know that people can just show up at the library the fourth Tuesday, 3:30, was it?
3:30 to 5.
3:30 to 5.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And that's a starting place.
yeah,
That's it.
exactly.
Exactly. Well,
So thank you for coming
well,
in.
we
Thank you for having
appreciate
us.
the
And
opportunity.
See you guys around.